and welcome to What Goes Around. I'm Eamon Murtaugh.
And I am Deb Grant.
And we like it that way.
Today on the podcast, Eamon is speaking to Aaron Trinder, producer-director of a brilliant documentary which came out recently called Free Party, A Folk History, all about the link-up between the travelling communities in the UK and the free party movement, raves, some of which I presume Eamon frequented when they were happening all around the country. The film, if you haven't seen it, is absolutely amazing, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your conversation with him, Eamon.
Yeah, it was actually brilliant because there was a moment when I was watching the film where I suddenly started seeing footage of somewhere I had been 35 years ago.
When I was watching the film, I was waiting for footage of you to show up, genuinely. I was looking out for you.
Honestly, I was looking around and there was a moment where they had like this footage of a rave from Lechlade, and I just remember seeing something go, oh, that, like, you know, like a tiny door in my mind had opened up and there I was, but I couldn't actually spot myself.
I was looking forward to see you gurning in a doorway somewhere.
Thank God there were no mobile phones in those days. But before all that, we're going to season your musical appetite with a little bit of Sault. But that isn't even all. Tell us who else we welcome today.
We welcome the guest Dee C Lee, of course, soul singer with Style Council, and Wham as well, which you might not have known about, and also an accomplished solo artist in her own right. Eamon has a little chat with Dee C Lee.
Let's get to podding right away.
Let's pod it out. Eamon Murtaugh, it's been a long, long time. Tell me what goes around.
Well, I'm going to talk about something that I have been mildly obsessed about for the last 3 or 4 years. And I think when I first thought I was going to talk about this, I was going to be angry, right? Because,
I'm intrigued.
Well, my favourite band, Sault, Inflow Productions and all that sort of stuff. So I just loved them. I mean, I just think they're the best thing since like Massive Attack and Tricky and that kind of era of like laid back, soulful, funky, groovy stuff. Absolutely love everything they've done. They've done a phenomenal 11 albums in 4 years.
That is incredible. Considering 11. The quality. That's amazing.
That's the thing, because I mean, listen, I've got 9 of them. I think there's two I haven't bought, but that is mainly due to not having enough money. I mean, at one stage they released 5 albums at once. And now I can't get 5 albums in a month. I'm getting all 5 albums by the same people. Anyway, so they have been amazing, and the quality has been really amazing, and I've been waiting to see them live. And then the other week they just suddenly went, Sault Live London next Thursday. So let me see, it's 2 weeks before Christmas, right? You're announcing a date in London. So I've got to get a babysitter, right, on a Thursday, which is not going to fly anyway because our babysitter's a college person, so she's got school in the morning. And you know, it's just I've been waiting for it for so long. I was kind of fuming, and then the next day I was there ready to buy the tickets. The tickets are £100 each.
No, I saw the controversy that this caused.
I was upset, right? I was very upset because I just thought, you know, any time £100 a lot, but 2 weeks before Christmas, I can't do it. You know, because it's like it's £100 for that, then it's like £75 for the train because I can't book in advance so I'm gonna have to get the expensive tickets. There's 2 of us, that's 150 quid. So that's 200, 450 quid. Then there's the babysitter, so it's now talking like 500 nicker for a night out on a Thursday. You know, to pay for the babysitting and the taxis and all that kind of stuff. So obviously couldn't go, and I was fuming. And
it was a bit obnoxious. I'm surprised that they did it that way. I understand there was an element of it that was kind of in line with their whole mystique, you know, last minute, But like, I think it's really frustrating generally when bands like, I understand their mystique and whatever, but like, it's a bit shit to like make things as difficult as possible for people who've been supporting you.
I admire their little, you know, undercover, we do what we like, we're outside the system thing. That's very cool, but I also want to bloody see them. You know? I also want to be able to, you know, I just, not everyone has that much money knocking around. And just the fact that I've been so into them for so long and literally hanging out for them to announce a live date, and then it comes and I just couldn't do it. And I thought 100 quid is outrageous. And then I saw what they put on. Did you see the footage of it? Fucking hell.
I did. It was very high spec.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Because they had like And this whole like arty intro where you kind of went in through someone's front room, and then there's all these weird like sort of boxes, plastic boxes full of artworks and stuff and album covers, and then get through into this massive warehouse space. And they had like 5 different stages set up. So they did, because they do all sorts of things, and some of it's like very orchestral. So they had like an orchestral section, and some of it is like, just them as a band. But then also Inflow produces Lil Sims.
Yeah.
So the Little Sims stuff is involved in that, and Clear Soul's solo work, So there's all these different aspects. They're all quite different, and they're all on these beautiful different stages. It just looked, and from everyone I spoke to who went, that it was absolutely phenomenal. And I was kind of annoyed at them, but you got to take your hat off, haven't you?
I imagine the ticket prices had a lot to do with the actual high production value of the event. Once you saw it, you were like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Because otherwise, it did feel like, why are you alienating the people who've supported? Yeah, I don't know. It just felt a little bit like a rejection.
Yeah. And, and it's an interesting thing with them because they just have done what they want, and they kind of rock up and say, oh, here's 5 albums, but they did give them away for free. And so you think, well, listen, okay, you gave me a load of stuff. I can't really be cross because you want to do your gigs in your own way, and they're doing more in Paris and all around the world and stuff. And I hats off to them because it looked amazing. But what I'm just thinking is, this guy Inflow, what a absolute phenomenal factory of music he's become, because you've got 3 Clear Soul albums. They're all brilliant. They're all really, really good. You've had at least 2 Lil Sims albums produced by him, absolutely amazing, set in America. And like, if you want to go down a really fun YouTube wormhole, type in American rappers react to Little Sims, because it's brilliant. Because like they're all just like, who is this woman? Oh my god, she got fire coming out of her and stuff. It's really funny, and they honestly don't know what to make of it, because she is like, the videos especially are like really, phenomenal to watch, and very idiosyncratic, very like only she does it like she does it. You know what I mean? And they're just like blown away, and they're all like big sort of gangster mafia types who look like they might shoot your ma in a second, but then within a few minutes they're just going, oh, this has got flow.
It's so cool, because I feel like this is kind of the future of UK music, and I think it's really interesting because the music industry has changed so much, and it's so difficult for artists to make money and also be creative in the way that they want to be creative. So it's amazing to see artists that have completely just done their own thing, and I guess putting on a one-off gig with 2 weeks notice, charging loads of money because it is so high spec, and is just part of the whole pattern of doing whatever the fuck they want. So you kind of have to applaud that.
That's the thing. I wanted to be cross, and then I said, well, you've spent the money on that. And then I thought back, and 4 years, 11 LPs, plus 3 solo projects, plus 2 or 3 other productions, that he's done. That's just an amazing amount of work. And the worst of those albums, they are still a really high bar of quality.
Yeah.
They're really interesting. I mean, it did 2 albums called Air and Air.Top, which are basically like orchestral choral pieces. They're like, they're like sort of modern classical music kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And it's not for everyone, but it is conspicuously high quality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything they've done, the Beatles only made 12 albums. They've made 11 already.
Yeah.
Where's this going to end?
Yeah. It is amazing. And I think it's a testament to what artists can do when they don't have the constraints of like label management, an expectation of wanting something to chart. They've really set a precedent for other artists. But Eamon, hopefully they'll come to Bristol. Do you think they'll just go on a world tour now and just put you out of your misery?
Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to do any of that stuff that normal bands do. I think because they have, literally set up their own model and it has worked.
Yeah.
It's not just that they've released 11 albums in 4 years. It's that they've released 11 albums, and you know they've sold well, and people have loved them, and they're critically acclaimed. You know what I mean? And they just keep coming out with more and more great music. Do you know?
Yeah.
And like when you look at someone like Lil Sims, she is going to be huge. Do you know? She every record gets better and better, and she is being taken to heart in America. You know, the sky's the limit with these people, and I'm just like at a stage where I've been a fan for a long time. And yeah, I was disappointed not to get in on that. But I just got to take my hat off and say, wow, on your own, exactly how you want it. Don't follow any of the traits that, you know, why should you go on the road and kill yourself for 2 years playing if you don't have to.
Yeah.
Why should you? So don't do it. Yeah,
Get out of the capitalist machine, or lean into the capitalist machine, but in your own way. I can't really tell what it is they're doing.
But
Whatever
it's
one
nice
it is,
because,
it's good.
Yeah, I mean, like, so they've had all these albums out, and they've released them all on record as well, which is great. So and they've sold really well. I know that because every time I've ordered one, it has taken 6 months for it to arrive because they've been doing it themselves. So they've done really, really well. But also they've given them away on MP3s. You know, so it's not like they are just grabbing the money. They're giving back, and they're, you know, they're just a phenomenon. And I think in 10, 15 years' time, people are going to look back at this period of productivity from Inflow Productions and just say that was a real high watermark of the UK music scene.
Yeah. Watch this space. You called it.
Watch that space. Yeah. More Sault, please. Lovely. There's been a lot written about the rave phenomenon, about the music, the technology and the fashion, about London, about Manchester and occasionally a few other places such as Ibiza or the superclubs of Ministry of Sound. But perhaps the most important catalyst to the entire scene was the way that the traveller community took rave around the country and gave it away for free. Now, a new film by Aaron Trinder, Free Party, A Folk History, takes a deep dive into the lives of the people who risked everything to bring parties to the people. It is the foundation stone of the entire movement that has for far too long been hidden under moneyed excess and the success of dance music. This film, I assure you, is an important document, and that is why we're delighted to welcome Aaron Trinder to the podcast. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, lovely to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you, and I really, really enjoyed your film, Free Party. It was amazing for me because that was kind of my youth. So
yeah.
When I saw a video film of Lechlade, which was a party I went to 35 years ago, something like that, 34, 35 years ago?
Not quite. I think
How long is it?
with my nerdy head, I think it's nearly 32 years.
32.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, it's
just before
yesterday.
Castle Morton.
But yeah,
a
seeing
mere
that
slip of a thing. Yeah,
seeing that again was just like it was funny because the images come up. And you have that unearing feeling of like, I recognise this. And then I was looking for myself, but I couldn't find myself. Which is probably just as well.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's when your parents or your grandparents see it, I suppose. That's when you've got to really be worried.
It's my children now, that's the one.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. The entire film, for me, captures like a really overlooked part of the whole electronic music phenomenon. Because we have a lot of stories about how Acid House got to London and Manchester and yada yada, and we've got a lot of stories about the bigger clubs and the bigger DJs and all that sort of thing. But really, the heart and soul of the scene at the start were free parties, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose where the film's focus is definitely something I thought had never really been tackled before, never really looked at before, which was that there was something in the early Acid House parties which was not just a club-based phenomenon or even a warehouse party-based phenomenon, but it was the combination of that music in a field somewhere, which very quickly kind of got taken away from the people who experienced it. Because, what happened is the big... they were illegal, but they were paid parties, the big M25 type things. They obviously were choosing sort of large spaces, often out in the countryside or aircraft hangars or the like, to throw these big ticketed events. And when the kind of gangsters moved in and the legislation 1990 kicked in, what happened is a lot of those people had sort of had a flavour of something magical, which they kind of didn't realise they needed, but once they'd had a flavour of it, they didn't want it to go, which was, I suppose, meeting in a somewhat more wild, free, different kind of space than that they were used to. And at the same time, what had been happening in an earlier generation, obviously, was that the traveller movement had been doing things in the outside for decades, since probably 1970 is the earliest, I suppose, recorded free festival, which was often thought of as Fun City, and then shortly afterwards there was things like the first Glastonbury, which was largely a free festival, and then the Bath Festival and the likes. And so that kind of remnant of the hippie movement, which formed the free festival scene, had actually been going for 20 odd years. And of course, a lot of the early acid house story, even the name, if you like, was very inspired by the hippie movement. Was, suddenly football hooligans had, long ponytailed hair, and they were wearing baggy, bright coloured clothes. So there was a real nod back to that. But the real meeting of those two worlds, which was the free festival world and the rave world, kind of didn't happen till about 1990, when effectively the sort of ravers who no longer had a home, they'd felt this sense of a utopia, of a new world opening up, encountered the travelling movement that had gone through a great deal of challenges, certainly with Thatcher's demonisation of them as a subculture, but also obviously with the Battle of the Beanfield. And the meeting of those two scenes was a kind of, in a way, I feel, a kind of extension beyond the original story about acid house club culture to a real cultural phenomenon, almost beyond music, but obviously powered by the amazing new music that had come over from Chicago and Detroit.
It's really interesting. The film opens up and shows part of the Battle of the Beanfield. And for those listeners who are too young, don't remember or don't know about it, this was a big crackdown on travellers moving around, basically.
Yeah.
And the police came in and they just smashed everyone's buses. They attacked people. It was absolutely brutal. And you've got some footage of that at the start of the film that's really quite shocking. And really, that's not the end of it either, because although you can kind of see the sort of state's anger at this way of life, once it got married to the party movement, it became a real... it was a running feud, wasn't it, between the two of them? It was like a cat and mouse game that just went on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Travellers had obviously had state and police oppression and media demonisation for getting on for 20 years, but so had the young people who were going to acid house parties, because that was the new folk devil of the day, wasn't it? It was talked about in Parliament, and there was all those sort of famous kind of headlines in the Sun, and in a way all kind of I have to say, all predominantly right-wing governments, but other governments too, they kind of divide and rule. And what they do is they usually pick on minorities. They usually pick on specific subcultures that are easy pickings. So for a long time in the 70s and 80s, the Travellers were easy pickings because they didn't exist within the mainstream. They lived on common land. They did things that probably annoyed farmers, that sort of stuff. So they were easy pickings. And of course, in the 80s, at the end of the Thatcher era, Thatcher talking about there being no society, well, suddenly all these kids getting together, taking drugs, listening to loud, repetitive beats, and kind of loving each other, and also the cross across the kind of social strata. So definitely all of the race barriers and the sort of the class barriers and the town and country, gender, sexuality, all those things kind of melted away during acid house to a certain extent. So that's a threat to the status quo, which likes to keep us in our boxes, particularly young people. Like as long as we're good kind of consumers, they're happy. But suddenly, when we're doing things for ourselves, amongst ourselves, organised by ourselves, it's very scary for the state. So I think in a lot of ways, it was the meeting of those two cultures, which on paper wouldn't really fit. Suddenly, wow, this is a real recipe for state and media anxiousness or anger, and a great kind of opportunity, I suppose, again to have a folk devil of the day.
I think it's interesting because like there was so much good obviously came out of it, you know, like there was, like you said, it was a great breaking down in the way people treated each other and a coming together of people from different areas. There was the whole aspect of football violence, which was, it's kind of hard to explain to people nowadays, but that was normality. My hometown was Saturday, Friday night fighting when the pubs shut at 11. People would come out of the pubs, and that's what they would do. That would be the highlight of those people's week. And the only other highlight they had would be the trouble they'd have after a football match on a Saturday or occasionally midweek. And that was really regular, ordinary Joe was doing that every week. And all of that melted away for a few years while this music and the drugs and the whole scene came together and started bubbling up. And it's really interesting how much kickback that got from the state. I was talking to Emma Warren, who's written a brilliant book called Dance Your Way Home.
Yeah, fabulous,
And one of the things she said when we were talking about sort of dance music, which let's not forget, isn't like a protest music of the 1960s. There's hardly any lyrics at all, and the lyrics that are in them are nonsensical to a large part. You know, they're just little samples of people saying "come on" or whatever. Yeah. But she said something really interesting, which she said that we know dance music is political because of the way governments react to it. And when I watched your film, I think one of the things that really brought it home is not only the sort of police reaction to it to begin with, which was a little bit bemusement and a little bit of containment, but when there was a point where the film took a very dark turn, and I think it was when you were showing the roundhouse parties, and there was another party that was out in a big industrial warehouse, and the police showed up, and not only did they show up, but they showed up like in riot gear, without numbers, without any identification, and they were there solely to smash the place up and to teach those travellers a lesson, weren't they?
Yeah, and in a way it was a real echo of the Beanfield. Not saying it was comparable in level of violence, but there seemed to have been a sort of a tactic that the Tories had used with previous groups that were basically getting under their skin. So they did the same with the miners. They effectively brought in a paramilitary or somewhat secret sort of police force with no numbers, so no answer, no way to be answered back to, no kind of responsibility if somebody does something wrong. And the same thing obviously happened at the Beanfield, was that effectively they drafted in people from the army or people from other police forces, again with no numbers, to effectively give those people a kicking. That was and it seems unimaginable now, but I think we're kind of getting a bit more of a sense that this is becoming institutionalized now, as in that if you don't like a subculture, you either legalize them out of the equation by creating new laws, or back in those days, you effectively go and give them a kicking. And so Acton Lane was the famous example where the police effectively surrounded it. And rather than saying, right, you've got to turn the sound system off now, this is you've gone on too long, using the law, instead what they did was they just battered down the doors, and they started smashing the decks up, and they started beating people up randomly. So it was, and the interesting thing about that was that there was no actual arrests. So nobody was arrested for a crime. They were just taught a lesson, and that's from the playbook of totalitarian regimes. That's not really a legal process. And it was what was interesting about that. Obviously, it was clearly it was a way that the state thought that they were going to get the upper hand, was to just scare people into stopping doing what they're doing. But of course, these were young people who were very driven by this fantastic utopian experience they'd had, and in some ways, what it meant was that they got even more kind of riled up to do it. And so, Spiral Tribe particularly became kind of almost, how would you describe it?
Well,
they almost
it went
became
very
radicalized,
militant, didn't it? And
they became almost
even the
radicalized.
way they dressed, because this was the age of global hypercolour t-shirts. What a great idea they were.
Yeah.
But you know, this is like, you know, it was caftans, it was bum bags, it was bright clothes, it was baggy jeans, it was, you know, real bright. And suddenly Spiral Tribe were pretty much dressed like burglars or paramilitaries. Do you know what I mean? They were all in black. It was, the music went very, very dark and hard.
Yeah.
It was, you know, it was a real, it was a fight for survival, I think, from their side of things.
Yeah, I think they openly say, and actually Mark, who's just written a really good book, it'd be worth getting him on the podcast at some point, A Darker Electricity, says their transition was from fluffy to tough. So they started off, you know, it was all about being loved up, colours, long hair, you know, kind of echoing back to that hippie ideal. But as soon as you kind of get that level of intensity, and of course they were all arrested at Castle Morton because they were the last people there, and they were potentially targeted, and the sound system got impounded, etc., all their stuff got impounded. But rather than folding with that, they actually kind of toughened up their image. And, you know, I think it was over that period where they decided to shave their head, get the black bomber jackets, and that was also a slight response to them getting more kind of, you know, people turning up trying to kind of mug people at the parties as well. So the size of the parties get so big that you start getting crews turning up trying to mug them. So, you know, they were toughening up. And but you're right, very soon after that the music seemed to go from that kind of, you know, everybody feel good. You know, you talk about the sort of dance music catchphrases, and they were those sort of, before that they were very much, you know, the generic, you know, everybody's free, you know, hands in the air kind of thing. But then after that it was, you know, psycho, it was hardcore, it was all these things. There was definitely something that happened, and it was like the music, the image, everything kind of shifted away from that to unity to a tougher, edgier feeling.
It became a very us v them situation, and unsurprisingly really, because not only did they have this kind of crackdown for you know, physical crackdown from the police force, but the government of the day also went after them with the criminal justice bill, which of course, you know, a lot of people look at that and say, oh well, you know, these kids were having parties, it was a bit loud, and you know, they shouldn't be allowed to break into these warehouses, and yada yada. All good reasoning. But when you look at what was in the criminal justice bill, there was so much more. It basically outlawed a gypsy life. And there were loads of other little clauses and bits. And just the fact that it was the first piece of legislation that I can think of which outlawed an art form. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
You can have music, but you can't have this type of music. That's incredible that happened.
Well, it's you know, a lot of people have said that there was echoes in a way of what the Nazis did. You know, was they outlawed swing, you know, and jazz, because it was for them it was a kind of, you know, unclean racial kind of thing. And I think to a certain extent there is a sort of racial element to this, because there's a sense of, you know, this kind of dark devil's music that's repetitive, that's making us all. Making our children go into trance-like states. You know, there's a certain element of that puritanical worldview which is, you can feel in the legislation around the CJB. But you're certainly right that in a way those were the headlines, and those were the things which helped to push the legislation through Parliament, because, you know, generally Middle England was a bit annoyed by young people going out and having a good time at the weekends without, you know, it being sanctioned by the state. Because we also got to remember, like you said earlier, you know, the pubs shut at 10:30. I mean, you know, the modern world we live in, albeit, you know, we may think that people making a noise, young people making a noise outside, in a way that drive that young people had back then changed the world to the world closer that we're in now, in that we have festivals where music stays up going on till 6 a.m. We have clubs that we can go to. We have late night bars. All of that really came from the fact that there were young people pushing for a new kind of life. But you're right that the legislation in the CJB was, the headlines were about raves, but actually a lot of it was the slow erosion and the slow shift away from matters like trespass being civil issues, which would be where a farmer of land might well say, look, excuse me, travelling people, you can't stay here. I bring my cattle and I have my sheep here. And there'd be a negotiation, and eventually people would move on to a criminal thing. And the criminal aspect of it means that actually it's not even the farmer or whoever's on adjacent land who has to become annoyed by this. It's just an immediate prison sentence if you have, for example, more than 20 vehicles in a place. So it's also the destruction of a community for travelling people, because there was a safety in numbers. So, if you're on a traveller site and you're a small amount of people, well, you're more under threat because you have less protection in terms of the community you have around you. So there was definitely a sense that it was killing multiple birds with one stone, which was, let's blame these ravers and these travellers, and let's push through all sorts of laws about access to common space, rambling, and now of course we're seeing laws that are even more draconian, that are being pushed through on a regular basis, that in fact nobody even knows the name of. They're so obscure, they've been pushed through during lockdown and beyond.
Now protest, you're not allowed to be a nuisance. Well, what is protest if it isn't being a nuisance? I don't really understand.
Absolutely. Noisy protest. I mean, it's quite shocking, isn't it? What kind of quiet protest is there that's ever been effective?
But you can, for me, it felt like that moment really was, the start of a very slippery slope, and it's no wonder we are where we are, because that was allowed to happen, really. And I felt watching the film, it was good that you didn't just stop there, that you did show a little bit about how the various traveller groups reacted to that. The way Spiral Tribe, for example, went off into Europe and continued to do their thing under a more liberal kind of governmental view, I suppose. But the scene didn't stop, and although in England it became much more of a legal framework, the music and the things that had happened in society, it's like the cat was out of the bag by that stage. Like you say, the licensing laws were going to change. That kids were no longer going to be satisfied for to have the same rules as their parents had, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's no doubt that in some ways the system absorbed all of the things that it wanted to absorb, that it could absorb and legalise. So, the festival movement that we have, I mean, we've got to remember that in 1988, 89, there was Glastonbury, there was Reading. They were basically a band in a field that stopped at 11 o'clock. It was a muddy field. Everybody went to bed. There was the free festivals, which were more wild, but again, they were largely sort of clamped down upon by that point. But the festival movement effectively was entirely changed by this generation of people who wanted to listen to dance music, wanted to stay out late, but also all the creativity around that. So, the likes of Lost Vagueness that became Shangri-La, the modern festivals all around the world that are not just a band in a muddy field. They are, immersive experiences to some degree. And yes, the pubs and clubs obviously got late licenses, but the problem, I suppose, is that it's opened a door, and obviously it's legalized things, but now those things are so expensive. I mean, it was only a day or two ago where everybody I knew tried to get Glastonbury tickets and couldn't, for example. Impossible. Even if you did get Glastonbury tickets, it's fabulous experience that it is, it's expensive once you're there. So young people will always have this urge to stick together, to do things together, to make things together, to gather, to party, to all do all those things, and their options are sort of lower and lower, because actually even the mainstream that has accepted that people want to go out and party and enjoy each other's company and get high, do all of those things that they do, is so expensive and inaccessible for a lot of people, or it's only accessible for wealthy people. So there's a whole swathe of society that will have to find another way in some way. So I do wonder whether, as there is a resurgence in free gatherings happening across the world, although they are under a lot more state pressure, it's almost an inevitability, because what do people want to do? Well, they have to gather, they have to be together, they have to make their own entertainment. And so I wonder whether the time is sort of ripe for that. And the young people who've seen the film actually have come up to me a lot of the time and said, "Oh, we're doing it this way," and they
that
are
was
inspired by that.
Quite an eye opener, wasn't it? The amount of people who were talking like that. We had a little Q&A session after we watched the film at the Cube in Bristol, and it was interesting to hear another generation really excitedly talking about like trying to ape those days and trying to do their own thing with it. And I think, I mean, one of the reasons I really enjoyed the film and why I think it's such an important film, I don't think this is just like something that's a good chewing gum watch. I think it's like, this is an important document because there wasn't access to cameras and being able to record things like we have nowadays. There was no internet, there were no mobile phones. And I know you had, sorry, what was the name of the cameraman guy?
Oh, yeah, so there was Justin, who was probably one of maybe a handful of people back then who had a camera. So massive thanks to them for their documenting from within the scene. But it was certainly not normally the done thing to have a camera. It was not cool. You know, you were probably thought of as police. And in fact, Justin had an experience where he had somebody very much kind of get angry with him because he did have a camera, even though he was documenting it as a participant rather than, from outside the scene.
He was a real outsider, to be honest, because in those days, people were very wary of cameras, and certainly at an illegal party where everyone was, doing something that was definitely, not up the straight and narrow. There was quite a lot of worry. If you saw someone with a camera, you kind of instantly presumed it must be some official body because video cameras were expensive and bulky and difficult things to have. But the footage he got is absolutely amazing. It just captures a time before all of the internet changes and the technology changes that came following the 90s. It really is an important document.
Yeah, I mean, Justin got some fabulous footage of some of those key kind of 91, 92 free festivals / huge raves, and they are kind of magic because, and when I discovered them, and it wasn't just Justin. There was a guy called Gareth Morris who did the quite well-known documentary called Operation Solstice, which was about the beanfield actually, and he'd been covering the traveller movement and the sort of shift from the travelling scene into the rave scene during that period as well. And there were 3 or 4 other people. Andrew, my one of my editors and collaborator on the film, he was filming quite a lot of that stuff in Europe. So there was 5 or 6 key contributors that really without them I wouldn't have really have had much of a film. But I think the fact that it was a secret scene, the fact that it was a hidden world, the fact that in some ways you had to really work to find those parties, and sometimes you wouldn't find them,
Yeah, I've spent many a night driving around the countryside without a clue, listening for the distant thump of a sub bass somewhere.
Absolutely. And that was part of the charm, was that albeit we're so used to everything being given to us on a plate now. All music is there for us all the time. All film entertainment is there for us all time with the click of a button. Most entertainment is a button click, and we've got the tickets. Apart from Glastonbury. Most things are designed to be easy for us, whereas actually to find these events, it really was a magical mystery. You really did have to search, and part of the search made it all the more precious when it did happen. And the fact that it also happened outside of the sort of legal structures or the conventional structures, and that people did make it between them, made it even more precious, I think. And the fact that it was so in the moment and so few people did document it, I think even adds a third layer of magic to it. And it was what was really interesting, and it's one of the final things people say in the film, and I put that in a way because people kept saying the same word over and over again. They kept saying it was magic. It was like magic, because in some ways it was a kind of a thing that seems impossible, as in it seems like people have made something from nothing that I suppose, is the sort of takeaway in some ways. This idea that people can make something from nothing, that is like magic, that's for themselves, for each other, that's largely a selfless pursuit. That people, the people like Jess and Dave from Circus Warp, they would laugh. They would say, "Oh, we did it for nothing. We'd hand round the bucket just to pay for the generator, but we'd never expected any money." They literally lived this lifestyle week by week because they just loved to put these events on, and they went to exhaustive effort to decorate it, to make sure there was places that people could get a drink, and it was like, but they did it because they came partly because if they came from that free festival thing. They did it for the enjoyment, for the joy of making people experience something amazing, and that is an incredible thought now in our very commercial world.
Well, it certainly is, and it's a fantastic film, and I really appreciate the work you and your crew have done on it. I think if you weren't part of that scene, it will be a real eye-opener for you to see quite how political and how stressful it all got in the end. And also how every single person in that film who was part of that scene still talks about it with a kind of misty-eyed love that you just don't get about most subjects. Do you know what I mean? There's a genuine life-changing thing that happened to all those people. And it's so great that you've managed to preserve it in your film.
I'm really happy to be able to share it, and thanks very much for your kind words and support. And I think that it does translate to other generations. Obviously, it's fabulous for people like you and myself and people of that era to kind of look back in some way. But the joy has been actually seeing that, but also younger people watching it now and realising that world did exist, and that those people weren't really any different from them. They just lived in a slightly different environment with a different worldview, but that they clearly crave for something like that of their own. And I really hope that in some way the film can give a little bit of that inspiration for new generations to do their thing, to find their thing, and to make it, even more wonderful, even more surprising, even more magical than what we did or what people did back then.
Well, that's a lovely thought. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Aaron. That was a really interesting discussion.
Thanks very much. Lovely to be here.
What we're gonna do right here is go back.
Way back into time.
That's right.
Name that tune. Name that tune.
Our guest today is one of the finest British soul singers of her generation. Whether leading the line or offering support from the background, Dee C Lee has made an incredible contribution to the UK's music scene. She's created underground bangers and graced the top 10, both as a solo artist and part of collaborative projects. Having sung with the likes of Wham and the Style Council, as well as Guru's seminal jazz hip-hop project Jazzamatazz, she's had an incredible career. But now she's back front and centre with a new release on Acid Jazz Records called Don't Forget About Love. Dee C Lee, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And I have to say, I was saying to you just before we started, I've been listening to your voice for so long, since I was a teenager, really. And it's really exciting to have you back. What was it that kind of gave you the impetus to... Because this is one of your songs, isn't it? And it's brand new on Acid Jazz. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about how it happened that you came back and decided now was the time to do something new. Because it's been a while, hasn't it?
It has, and I'd love to tell you that. Thank you. So, okay, yeah, it has been a while. I forgot actually how long, but when I was reminded, I nearly fell off the chair. But but life does fly by. And but the thing is, in between living life, I've always been making music. I still write, and my daughter is a musician, so I'm very much like listening to what she gets up to and pay attention like that. And I think I got a little taste for wanting to come back again because, I mean, apart from the fact that I seem to have accumulated a new bunch of young fans, which is fabulous, that in itself has made me want to kind of come back and, see what's up, see what's out there.
Yeah. And, so you were writing all the time. It wasn't like you stopped dead. I mean, obviously, I know you were singing still, but you actually did keep writing and making stuff all through that period, right?
Yeah, I mean, not as heavily as I do because, but sometimes songs come to you and you just have to write them down. So nothing recorded, but loads of stuff in the old back burner, waiting for the opportunity to master them a little bit. And it was only when the opportunity to cut this track with Acid Jazz came out, I started to start writing a little bit more with it now,
More focused on it. Yeah.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw a lovely interview with Curtis Mayfield once, and he was saying, like, a song's like a bird that lands in your hand for a minute.
That's beautiful.
And you either catch it or it flies off. And
that's so true. So true. I literally just had a new song the other day and I was sitting in the bar, for God's sake. And that's really annoying but I had to get it down. So lucky I didn't drop the phone in the bar.
That's the one. That's the danger, isn't it?
It is, but I'm really happy I got it down.
You need to get your house set up like Prince in his Paisley Park. We had a microphone in every room.
I need some of that Prince money, that's for sure.
Yeah, that'd be good. Well, listen, the big new single on Acid Jazz, and what a great label to see Acid Jazz bringing you out as well, because just like yourself, they've got such a place in British soul history, haven't they?
They really have, and that's exactly why. I mean, I couldn't have come back if you want. There was nobody I was that excited to do anything with, even though I did really want to do something. But obviously, when I bumped into my very old friend Eddie Pillar again, he was like, "What are you up to?" I was like, "Nothing. Give me something to do." And he was like, "Let's do it." And this is where we're at.
Oh, well done, Eddie. He's a good lad, that one.
He is.
I done my time as a totally wired DJ, and yeah, I used to go into the Bethnal Green studios.
Oh, bless you! So you're a real music boy.
Yeah, before the pandemic and all that, I was doing a radio show every month in there. But then, since then, it's been kind of like remote. It's not quite the same. So I miss all the gang. If you see them, say hello.
I absolutely will, sweetie. I absolutely will.
So, I mean, it's great you've got this new stuff out, and I think we need to just touch a little bit on the things that have gone before as well, because I think a lot of people kind of know your name from around various projects, but I mean, you've hit some really big markers in the past. I mean, I didn't really realise this, right? But I watched the Wham documentary on Netflix the other day. I didn't realise you were the pre-Pepsi and Shirley. I didn't realise you were there first.
That's all right, hon. I mean, everybody has their little foray into the music business, and I didn't realise that they were going to be so big. Yeah. But that's exactly what I mean. I'd been working with people before Wham, but the first people that I'd say became famous, if you like, it would be Wham.
Amazing. At that time was, they were big for me as a 12-year-old lad. I was like, oh my God, I'm a bad boy too.
I bet you still are.
No, I did really.
No, not really.
But I went back and listened to them the other day, and I just thought, oh yeah, you can really hear that now. With all that happened afterwards, George's career and stuff. What a lovely touchstone for you to have that in your past.
I had no idea that it would turn out like that, but it was, everything with those guys was so incredibly organic. Shirley and Andrew are still in my life today.
Oh,
we just did not know where this was going to go, and I'm very, very grateful to Wham for, introducing me to the world, as it were.
Yeah. I mean, you have this thing. I did watch that film. I don't know if you've seen it, like 20 Foot from Starlight, I think it's called, something like that. Where it's all about backing singers.
I haven't seen that.
No, it's a really good watch. I think it's on Netflix. And
thank you. I'll watch out for that.
I think you'd enjoy it. And what's lovely about it is you finally get the camera just turning away from the likes of Sting or, Wham or whoever it might be, and actually saying, who are these amazing singers that are 20 foot away from where everyone's looking? And without them, the whole thing falls down. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing. The whole thing with tracks and making music, it is always very much teamwork. I mean, the artists, all of us, to make what really works, it is a teamwork thing. And backing vocals are just as important as lead vocals, because they all complement each other, and that's meant to be the point.
But did you find it? Was it an easy choice for you to give the limelight to other people, or did you always want to jump up front and centre?
I'd be totally honest with you. I have never really liked being in the front. And the reason I became a backing singer is because I'm kind of a frustrated musician. I was too damn lazy to learn anything. And so I started mimicking with the voice. So when I heard other vocalists and, they're doing something, I started to develop this vibe of like, what I call vocal melodies, but they're also backing vocals. So you hear something, and I could always find something that can complement that, not take it over or be the top one. I just like what sounds good.
There's a real skill to being able to, place things in the mix properly, isn't there?
I think so, yeah. And that's not my forte, but sometimes I hear things and I just like to get the best of something, Anything I work with, anything I work on, I like it to be the best it can possibly be. And if whatever I can bring to the party, that's what I will do,
Well, it definitely shines through for sure. And, although you say you didn't like being front and centre, I mean...
I've got used to it. I like it now.
Top 10, mate. Top 10. You know what I mean?
I had no choice. I had to do that because that was one of those songs that I mean, again, with the songwriting, I'd never really had an opportunity to have songs that I've actually written get to the forefront. When I was given that opportunity, of course, I took it and I ran with it. So, yeah, I'm really glad I did because, number two, see the day.
Man. That's amazing. I mean, it's a long time ago now, but I bet that now just gives you a real rosy glow just to think,
always.
Oh, man, I did that.
Always.
Wow.
Always. If I was always saying if I'd never done anything again, I've still got that. And I'm very proud of that. I was very young and I was very, sort of focused on just writing this beautiful song and getting somebody to listen to it. And the fact that they listened and it blew up the way it did always blew me away, and I'll never forget that feeling.
Yeah,
always happy.
Lovely. Well deserved. And,
Thank you.
I was talking to a friend of mine recently, a guy called Kieran, who is going to be fumingly jealous today because he is a Paul Weller obsessive and often goes on long internet rants about how the Style Council are the most underrated British soul band of all time because what amazing work you did.
Thank you so much. I think that's what I really, really loved about the Style Council because I was working with a bunch of serious musicians. And when I say serious, not, snotty, just people that really appreciated music. We loved working together, blending the stuff. The Style Council gave me the most freedom to experiment with the BVs. Paul literally just let me go. There's only once or twice that he'd really know what he'd want. And of course, that's what you would do. And if there's anything I could add to that, of course I would. And, there was never any egos. It was always a really fabulous, fabulous way to work.
Yeah. And I thought it was a really interesting thing because... Well, let's be honest. There was quite a lot of antipathy towards Paul moving on and doing that at the time. So, I feel, looking back, that the Style Council did not get a fair crack of the whip from the media and from, the scene around at that time. And I mean, were you aware that there was a lot of pressure coming from his background and, people who basically just wanted the jam part 2?
Yeah.
Did you feel that?
Oh yeah, we did. We did sometimes, but we also really felt the love of the new fans or the old fans growing with us, or growing with him, should I say, growing with him to his next venture. And basically, anybody who's a mod, they understand that the love of music is going to just keep driving you. You're not going to keep, that was his fans. Yeah. But everybody else who was listening, they just appreciate music for the sake of music.
Absolutely, and the mod sensibility is born of soul music anyway, isn't it? That's absolutely. Which is why So I think I don't know what that was all about. I'll never really understand that sort of thing. But when it started to not be fun, I think it was time to we know what we did, we know what we were about, and we've always been very proud of what we've done. I just think when you look at it now, it shines brighter than it ever did. I've been going back and listening to the other albums, and there's even that whole album that wasn't released.
Thank you for saying that.
You know what I mean? Amazing work, really amazing work. And I'd like to pass on from myself and a few others just to say, that stuff was really on point and still stands up today. So
thank you, and I agree with you.
It's important stuff. So let's talk about some of the things that got you into this position and gave you the love for music. I've asked you to pick out a few phonographic memories for us.
Yes.
And I love them.
Soul boy, you.
Well, sometimes you get
there's
people...
a soul boy out there.
Sometimes you get people on, I'm kind of just being polite, saying, oh, that's nice, yeah. Well, I like these a lot.
I'm really glad you do. You got taste.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Lonnie Liston Smith and what a track. Space Princess. Is it disco? Is it jazz? Is it funk?
Right?
Is it everything?
You've got me on there. That's exactly why I picked it. That track totally blew me away when I first heard it. I mean, in the days that I heard that, there was a lot of good stuff around Ovs, but he just kind of stood out with that, like you say, what is this? Is it disco? Is it jazz? And it just blew me away. And you can listen to it over and over again and still discover different musicianship going on in there, because there's so much going on in there. I love that. And also his vocals on it, his vocals on that. I love that. So yes.
Of my dream, another you I never find to see. Although I never met you, I still know you. I can see you floating just beyond my fingertips, inviting me to a love that I don't wanna miss. You're my space princess. You're my space princess. I got to have you. You share your life with me. Let's get together.
I nearly died and went to heaven when on Guru's Jazzamatazz, I got to throw this in, come on.
Yeah, I know, I was about to ask you, so you go right ahead.
I knew it was coming. I also deliberately picked it because you can't imagine, when I first got a chance to work with Lonnie Liston Smith, I had to keep picking my jaw up off the floor and try not to babble like an idiot, because I was totally how you say, or starstruck. I mean, it was a funny thing, but he really loved my voice, and I just kept going, but your music, and there's a lot more other Lonnie Liston Smith stuff, but Space Princess was just the standout for me. That's what made it stand. I remember talking to him about it, and he was really impressed. Not impressed. He was really what's the word? He was very grateful for the praise. But I was telling him, I was like, it's so good. So yeah, I can't stop going on about it. So shut up.
And I listened to it again the other day, and you're so right about hearing new things in it all the time.
Yeah,
it's like layers of.
So many layers.
That whole thing about it not being jazz, not being funk, not being disco, but it's a bit of everything. And the more you listen to it, the more you can hear little licks in the background. And I think one of the things I'd advise anyone to do if after this they go out and go and chase that single down, just listen to it once, then listen to the vocals, then listen to the bass, then listen to listen to each part.
Absolutely, you got to keep listening, because there's so much going on and it's all so fabulous. It just it takes your breath away, that track.
You managed to get involved with Guru's Jazzamatazz project. I mean, you did the tour, didn't you?
I did. I did the first European tour, and then.
Can we have a roll call? Who did you play with?
Okay, I just want to show off right now. Thank you for letting me show off. Okay, so Dee C Lee was on stage with, let me say, obviously the fabulous Guru. Yeah. But Guru incorporated into this particular tour. We had Roy Ayers, we had Lonnie Liston Smith, and we had the master Donald Byrd.
Oh my God! Wow!
Oh my God! So I mean, I don't even think I got paid for that gig. I don't think I was around.
That's all right. I'd take that one. That's fine.
I think they took advantage because I was so starstruck. I was all up in there, Yeah. But it was just the most fabulous, and I mean, it was a great time. The guys were brilliant. Guru was. Bless him, God rest in peace, my darling. He was an amazing, not just the most beautiful rapper, but his taste in music and the And it was a pleasure hanging with him in regards to talking about music, listening to music on that tour bus, getting the lowdown on that tour bus from some of the tracks we were into, from Donald Byrd and from Lonnie Liston and from Roy Ayers. So we were just slapping it up, just playing tracks and questioning them, and it was, and in between that, play some gigs. In between that, we did. We managed to get a few gigs in.
A few gigs here and there, just to break up the conversation. But I mean, I can imagine first of all, I wouldn't be able to speak in that company at all. But it's hard not speaking to you now, to be quite honest.
Oh, bless you, thank you.
But
honestly,
someone like Donald Byrd's. Oh yes, I must have 10 albums by both of those people.
Well, exactly.
You know what I mean? And
exactly.
They never leave the bag. When I play out, there's always at least one Roy Ayers, always at least something by the
Always. You can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong there. Yeah. So that was the most. I think that was it. I think after that, I was like, oh, you know what? I've done it all. I'm just gonna stay at home and look after the kids or something. I don't know. Yeah, because I was a bit blown away. Yeah,
that's good. I mean, it was such a great project. One of the things I like about some of the things you've done in your career, like the Style Council, for instance, is it introduces types of music and artists that maybe a lot of people weren't quite au fait with. Do you know what I mean? So when the Style Council came out with all this incredible soul influenced music, there was a lot of people who were looking for the going underground guitars who suddenly went, actually, do you know what? That's really interesting. And then they go down this rabbit hole and find this stuff. And Jazzamatazz, certainly, I know for a fact, growing up, I was lucky because I used to fall asleep to my mum's. My mum had one of those radios you could put on for an hour. And so I would fall asleep to Sounds of Jazz by Roger Bannister on Radio 2 or something.
Nice.
So I was really into jazz anyway. But, it was kind of like a little guilty secret I used to carry around with me because, 15-year-old kids didn't listen to jazz,
Right, yeah. But you were a bit like me. I was a weirdo. Imagine being like that Anna girl. I just really got into this music that I couldn't actually do anything about because, and the rare occasions I got an opportunity to learn. My mum killed herself cleaning houses and stuff. Paid the money for me to do piano lessons, violin lessons. I think flute even. I mean everything. Right. So lazy. I didn't do any of it. So I just made up for it with my voice.
Well, you did all right.
Thank you.
But yeah, that Jazzamatazz project, just suddenly I was able to talk about that to my peers and turn them on to things that I was really into, and it just stopped being a dirty word for a while, and then became the hippest thing in the world, and then that whole period, Acid Jazz Records, of course, and Talking Loud Records. That period was so fruitful for the UK scene, especially, wasn't it?
Oh man, it was. It was an explosion of the most fabulous music everywhere you went. It was just like coming out of the water, wasn't it? In those days, it was fabulous days.
Yeah, lovely stuff. So let's move on to your second choice. So I'd never heard of Ned Doheny.
Yes, Doheny, I think.
Doheny, yeah.
Doheny.
I think it's me Irish. I want to say Doherty. But this track, To Prove My Love, is a funky banger. And I'm going to Discog straight after this to get myself a copy. Tell me about this.
Well, I mean, it's just like what you said. I mean, honestly, because I started doing this... like a bunch of interviews and stuff, which is really fabulous. I'm now being asked about music that I like. So I've always had like a list of stuff that I've got, so I can just pick it out depending on who I'm going to be talking to. So I was checking you out too, so I thought I'd pick this. And it's a smooth, but it's a dance groove, but it's so smooth, right? Yeah. I strive to make music this smooth. I mean, that is just so smooth. And you could just listen to that over and over again. You never ever get bored of that track. You can put that on the rewind and just keep playing, right? Yeah. So it's just, it just reminds me of it's like, like you're out somewhere, it comes on. When you're in the club, you're having a conversation. You just stop talking, you stop eating, you stop everything. You just have to listen to this track. That's what I feel about this. Hey.
one of those things as well. I think sometimes smooth can become too polished and lose something in there. You know, that happens a lot with soul bands, I think.
I think you're right.
Where they get to a point where they're recording, especially nowadays when there's a million billion plugins and extra bits you can polish up the music. It gets to a point where
yes, I get you.
You can't hear them playing anymore. Do you know what I mean? All you can hear is the sheen on the top of it.
That's right, but you can in this, can't you?
Yeah,
in this track, you can hear that real raw musicianship. Not too much going on. Almost sounds like a couple of takes. Do you know what I mean? It sounds like they're all playing together. It's just so smooth.
So whenabouts did you come across this? Did you grow up listening to this sort of stuff, or is this something that you found later?
Oh no, honey, I grew up listening to all of this. All these things I grew up listening to, and I was just trying to remember off the top of my head the time frame because I'm really bad at maths, but in 1970 I would have been 10. So from that age upwards, I was into pop music. Gary, I'm not going to say Gary Glitter, not anymore. Sorry about that. Sorry, just wipe that one out. Sorry, Mark Bolan, whoever was around at that time. Do you remember? Sort of that sort of time.
I'm 10 years younger than you, but I can remember. Right. Sort of 77 watching the Mark Bolan TV show, and I was a big David Bowie guy and all that stuff.
There you go, David Bowie, those guys. But then, somewhere along the line, and I can't remember where it was, it could have been just going to the local youth club. Yes, we did have those in my day. And luckily for me, there was somebody really into soul or jazz or something, and they just started playing a couple of tracks, which I just remember writing down the name, going to the record shop and getting that. And then when I went to the record shop, I got to listen to other tunes, similar, etc., etc. So I can't remember where the Ned Doheny track came in, but I just can't remember when that was, but I started to just pick up on different music, and I would spend, like a right train spotter, a lot of Saturdays and Sundays at places picking up old records that were recommended by DJ friends or other friends who were into music, and I'd hear something that they play. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people still do now, like a lot of people at Acid Jazz still do now.
I've seen them all in flashbacks straight after the shows, don't worry about
it. Right. So that's where it came from, and I can't remember exactly where, but it was in my quest to find good music, and it's one of those ones that just sticks out, and it's on my list of absolute faves. I've got loads.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. I mean, I can tell there's a big burning love there in there, and this was something you did regularly. This is like your pocket money was spent on these records. Yeah.
Everything, all my pocket money, everything, any money that I had, I started listening to music and gathering it. Without even realising what I was doing, I just loved it and wanted to listen to the vocals and the musicianship, and just used to blow me away even then when I was a kid.
Yeah, coming up like that and trying to get into the music industry, and obviously, I mean, you mentioned earlier about being a girl and doing all this. I mean, what was that like? Because I've worked with, especially, I'm not going to name names, but older DJs especially. Are a little bit like, this is my domain, I'm going to cover up my record label and...
Yep, I so know. But you know what? You just whittle away, and they forget that you're a girl, you're just one of the boys, and I just used to get in there and just, and sometimes just, maybe when someone's popped off to the bathroom, I have to have a quick peek in the old box, and or something's dropped down there, oh, what's that? Yeah, that's it, a bit cheeky.
So whereabouts did you go? I mean, was this, were you out in clubs, or just the odd concert, or was it just at home with the radio and your records?
A bit of all of it. And talking about concerts, I remember now that you've brought the memory up. So imagine your very, very first live concert, not pop band, not anything. Imagine going to see how old was I? I think I was about 10 or 11, and I wasn't even meant to go, but I lied about it, somehow got in. And I ended up going to see Earth, Wind and Fire for the first time. No. You don't even know what that did to me. You can't even. You can't even know. So it was on. After that.
I'll bet. If anything's going to touch it, it's going to be that.
Come on.
I've always had this thing, and I've mentioned it before in the podcast, so you can go in the records and check. But, when they say, if you could go and see any live band anytime, back through time... people always say, I'm going to see Jimi Hendrix, I'm going to see Bowie again, whatever. Yeah. I think Earth, Wind and Fire with the emotions.
Come on.
Stage set, glamour, funk, disco, soul.
I I don't. I think I was still left in the place, stayed in some sort of shock. You know, I think when they were cleaning up, the popcorn and stuff.
Who's this girl?
Still stood there with the mouth open and just like totally. Oh my God, they were so fabulous, and I never ever forgot that. And then I just started wanting to make music, listen to music, be involved in music, and anything that sounded like that, or even on those vibes, I was in.
Yeah, because when you look at old footage of them, I mean, there's just YouTube's just full of glorious clips. There are ones that you kind of know, like September and all that sort of stuff. But then you go back and you can see footage of them at massive outdoor concerts,
right?
Where they're just, the whole.
Hey, have you ever seen those guys perform Magic Mind?
Yes.
Oh my!
And the sax break in the middle.
Oh, come on, just stop that now. That just kills me every single time. Yeah. I love that.
There's just such a power to it all, isn't there?
Right. Absolutely. Have we gone off track?
I tell you what.
I could chat with you. I could chat music with you all day. For real.
Well, that's what we're all about. And actually, do you know what? It's great that we go on to a thing like that, because our podcast is about being a fan and being obsessed by music and just. You can't help but want to say more. You want to,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you must have seen the original, Philip Bailey and Maurice White, the original gang.
I did.
Crazy.
I didn't even know. I just remember, I think my ears and my jaw, and I remember that feeling of being totally shell-shocked. And I think when I was going home, I think, like when somebody can't talk or speak and they're just being ushered along, I think that was me. that was me on the way home.
Well, I suppose after that, it was a foregone conclusion that you were definitely going to go into music.
That definitely set the scene for me going into music, defo.
So your third choice, something a bit later, Lucy Pearl, Without You. I've not really heard this, so tell me a little bit about this.
Okay, now this one I hadn't heard, and this was introduced to me from a DJ friend. In fact, a really old friend of mine, he's a big exec now at Sony, Julian Palmer. He's a very old mate of mine, and he was DJing one time, and he just put that on, and I was just like, who is that? What? So after listening to that, I got the album too, and I mean, their tracks. I mean, there's some other tracks I didn't even realise it was the same band. They did Don't Mess With My Man, that really wicked dance track.
Oh, right, yeah.
Don't mess with my man, don't mess with my heart. Know that one?
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know that they did that. But Without You was was an album track or something, I think. But my God, I just love that track.
No matter what you do, I will hold on to you. You should stay down for me. Follow your heart and you will see. You will see. I can't walk, I can't talk. What can I do without you? I can't eat, I can't sleep. What can I do without you? Nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. What can I do without you? Without you.
See, I was thinking about covering it, but I would only mimic it, so it probably wouldn't be any good. It's just such a great track. I just love it. I love the performance. I love the beat. It's just, it's heartfelt, It's a very it tugs at the heartstrings. I love it. The performance of that track is just, mwah.
It's got that feel of a sort of later, more mature soul sound, That
Definitely, and it chugs along with that. Oh, just so nice, yeah.
I'm just tempted to encourage you to sing things now.
I keep forgetting we're actually. This is going out to people. They're going to think we're freaks.
Don't worry. This is why they subscribe. This is the whole reason we do it. So,
but
it's lovely. You seem to have lost none of your enthusiasm for any of this. Is that the case?
Oh, it is. I mean, I love my grown kids now. I mean, you ask them, they're just like, I've always got the music on. When the kids turn up, I've got a grandkid now, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm loving it. I've already got him started. He's doing the moves and everything. He comes in this house. He comes in this house. There's some jazz going on. There's Donald Byrd. There's Roy Ayers. He gets all the goodness. So they're being fed properly on the
There you
music.
go. Top parenting. Or grandparenting, I should say.
Yeah, for real.
Do you still find modern music that you like? Are you kind of sort of, you've got your era and you want to sort of concentrate on that, or are you still finding new things that come along?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I do, not as much as I used to. And it's not because there's not good bands out there or anything like that, because there are. It's just getting a chance to hear them, and I don't really know where those formats are. So I often wait for the youngsters in my life to play me something, and then I'm like, oh, I like that. And my assistant Erica has got me into the habit. Hello, darling. She's got me into the habit because sometimes I hear things on adverts, new stuff, and I like those vibes, you know.
Yeah.
So I might copy her and try and Shazam some of these adverts when you hear some of these tracks. Because just for future reference, because later on if I'm given the opportunity, I definitely still would like to make music, and I love the idea of making music with some young and fresh artists too. You know what I mean? Bringing some old school to the new school, it's always an interesting situation.
I'd love to get you hooked up with some of the new school of British jazz, you know.
How about Blue Lab Beats? You check those guys out? Yeah. I'm loving those boys. I love them so much. I met them too, and I keep mentioning their name because there is talk. I just want to concentrate on this project, see how it goes, see where it takes me. But at the very first opportunity, I'd like to catch up with those boys, because if you listen to some of their stuff, they're kind of young and old at the same. You know, they're young guys, but they've got an old ear. I like it.
I just think we're going through a period now where a lot of it's come full circle, and there's another generation who come up who are making their own thing, but they're respectful and very knowledgeable about the music of the past, you know?
Absolutely, yeah, I love that. Respectful and very knowledgeable. It's absolute pleasure hanging out with guys like the young guys and young ladies like that. You know, and there is. My daughter was doing something, I can't remember what it was, but the long and the short of it was, I ended up spur of the moment at Ronnie Scott's, and there was a couple of young jazz artists on. I think there's like Jazz Warriors.
Tomorrow's Warriors.
Oh wow!
They're so amazing, aren't
they? Amazing. And then some other young bands, which forgive me, I can't remember the names, but my God, they were good. So it gave me a lot of hope. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
we did a feature on Tomorrow's Warriors because I just think at the moment the way that they've invested, especially in minorities in inner cities that couldn't get the type of lessons they needed, and they've invested in those kids.
I think that's
for
fabulous.
20 years, and now we're seeing them come through, and you know the breadth of talent is unbelievable. And the fact that Ezra Collective won the Mercury Prize the other day. I mean, if I'd said to you 5 years ago, "Oh, the Mercury Prize is going to be won by a jazz band,"
you're right. I mean, that's just amazing, and I'm really, really happy for them. It's very much deserved.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, I love that.
Listen, the single's great, and I advise everyone to run out and get it. It's on Acid Jazz Records.
Oh, thank you.
It's called Don't Forget About Love, with the B-side being Be There in the Morning. I love you've got a B-side. People don't mess with B-sides enough anymore. You know?
They don't. In fact, we decided to call it a double A because we couldn't really decide which one to put out.
Yes.
We were calling it the double A because you can just play whichever side you like best, or you can play them both, or whatever.
It's great to hear it come back, and it's lovely to see. I love seeing the Acid Jazz logo on things. It just makes me want to buy it instantly.
And I'm so proud to have the Acid Jazz logo on my stuff. So yeah, I get you. And like I said, it's nice because, they brought me home. You know. Yeah.
So, what are the plans with it? I mean, are we going to follow up? Are we going to get albums? Are we going to get tours? Anything like that in the pipeline?
All of that. All of this said above. Everything you said, yeah. It's all still being, how you say, prepped. Yeah. But yes, all of the above. And when there's more to talk about, I hope you and I can talk about that.
Yeah, you drop
I'd love
the
to
line
do that again.
We'll definitely give
Absolutely.
you a
Absolutely, hon. Absolutely.
And if you're coming down Bristol way, then I'll come see you.
Oh, absolutely. I'll keep that in mind, sweetie.
Well, listen, Dee, it's been so lovely talking to you. And
it's been lovely talking to you.
I'm tempted to go on for another 40 minutes, but I suppose you've got things to do.
I kind of do, yeah, sadly.
Oh, well, listen, thank you so much for talking to us today and sharing your love of music. And I wish
absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Brilliant. And I wish you the very best of luck with the new single. And
Thank
just
you.
to say, you know, honestly, you've been in my ears for 40 years, and I love it. It's so great that you're still doing it, and it's so nice to talk to someone that I because you know these people on records, when you're obsessed by music and stuff, they become like pretend friends in your head. You know,
Don't worry, honey, I do that too.
I kind of feel like I know Donald Byrd in some weird way.
Well,
you know,
don't worry, because I do exactly the same thing. So don't worry. Yeah. Don't worry. I do the same thing.
Well, it's a pleasure talking to you, and best of luck with everything, okay?
Thank you, sweetheart. It was really lovely talking to you. Real fun.
And you, mate. Thanks a lot. If you enjoyed this podcast, you're one of us. You're one of our friends, and we like you. And because we're friends, we love each other, and we like to tell other people about how nice we are. So we'd like you to go out into the world, find some unsuspecting Herbert, and say, hey, go listen to What Goes Around podcast. It's free, and it's good for you, and it's all about music and being a fan.